Right. Hello, everyone. Nice to see you all again. So today we have Margherita Negri, who is going to talk to us about the political economy of open and closed borders. Feel free to jump into your questions, unmute yourself and ask questions in between. She's happy to take the questions. And Margherita, you have 50 minutes. Thanks for accepting our invitation. Floor is yours.
Thanks a lot, Apurav, and thanks a lot for inviting me. It's really nice to be virtually here. So this is a joint project with Matteo Gamalerio, who should appear at some point in the audience, and Massimo Morelli. So let me start with some motivation now. Okay, there you go. I don't think there's any need to convince this crowd that institutions matter, right? In particular, electoral systems. So we have ample evidence about this on the redistribution and how electoral system affect the type of redistribution in a country, the party structure, but also employer and investor protection and corruption. So the point that we want to make with this work is that we believe that institutions can also shape immigration policies. And in particular, we're going to look at two. So again, by institution, I'm going to mean electoral systems in this case. And we look at two types of electoral system. One is plurality, by which we mean a system where it is enough to get the plurality of the votes to get control of the decision-making power. Another one includes dual ballot and proportional representation, where you need the absolute majority of the votes to gain control of the decision-making power. Now, the results that we have theoretically hold both for dual ballot and for proportional representation, but I'm not going to talk about proportional representation here because our empirical analysis refers to dual ballot, so I'm going to just focus on that. I have some results in gray that refer to proportional representation, but I'm not still going to ignore them, okay? So just to give you the idea of the paper in a few words, our theoretical model has a baseline result that shows that dual ballot systems and proportional representation systems are more open to immigration. I'm going to be, of course, clearer about what we mean by more open later on. The mechanism that we have behind the model is that under plurality, we basically need a lower share of votes to gain control of the decision-making power, okay? You need the plurality and not the majority. The consequence of it is that when immigration becomes salient enough, so when there is the possibility to, when immigration becomes the major issue, and there is a party that can emerge almost only proposing migration, an anti-immigrant policy, it's easier for this party, more convenient for this party to enter under plurality than under dual ballot, okay? Simply because it's easier to win. And then the last result that we have in the theoretical model is that this is not true across all situations, but this happens only when the anti-immigrant sentiment in the country, so the share of anti-immigrant voters, is moderate. The idea here is that take the extreme case where only few people in the country are against immigration, then clearly there is, in either of the system, there will be a party that emerges as an anti-immigrant party, right? Take the other extreme where the vast majority of the country instead is anti-immigration, then it's very likely that in both systems, parties will emerge, okay? So what I'm going to show is that the difference in the two systems emerges when this anti-immigration sentiment in the country is moderate. It's not too large and not too low, okay? So I'm going to show you this model, and then I'm going to go to the way we test it. And we test it using Italian data, in particular Italian municipalities. And we exploit two features of the Italian municipalities. The first is that there is a program for refugee reception in Italy that is fully managed by mayors. Okay, so mayors are those who decide whether they want to open or not a refugee center in their municipality. And then the second feature that we exploit is that the electoral system of mayors in Italy changes at the 15,000 threshold. So below 15,000, below 15,000 inhabitants, mayors are elected through plurality. Above, they're elected through dual ballot system. But I'm going to say a little bit more about that later on. I'm going to go to the model if there is no preliminary question or clarification question about this. Right, so I think I'm going to skip this. I'm going to give you a graphical representation that for me works better. So here's our population. We have a mass one of voters, and you should think of them as distributed across the four corners of this square, okay? We have the horizontal axis that is an ideological dimension, okay? So either a voter could be leftist or could be rightist. And we have a vertical axis that represents instead their position on immigration. So either closed or, either open or closed at the top. We have a fraction ml of voters that have an ideology on the left and a fraction mr of voters that have an ideology on the right. Within them, we have voters that, for example, this FL is going to denote this share of people that are against immigration and they're leftist, okay? And similarly for FR is the share of people that are right on the ideology and they are against immigration, and 1 minus F and 1 minus FR are defined in the same way. Now, within these people, within each group, there will be people that put high salience on migration relatively to ideology, and those who instead put more salience on ideology. So each group will split it in two, okay? So let me again look at FL. The share FL of voters can be split again in an alpha L FL, and this alpha L is the share of people with ideology L who put more salience on immigration. What does it mean? It means that if these people are asked to vote between a right-wing anti-immigration party or a left-wing anti-immigration party, they will vote for the right wing. So they give more importance to the fact that a party gives them what they want on immigration, even though this party might not give them what they want on ideology, with respect to a party that gives them what they want on ideology, but not on migration, okay? 1 minus alpha L of, so the complement of that instead would vote for a left-wing party that doesn't give them what they want on immigration, but at least gives them what they want on the ideological spectrum. Okay, so we can do the same for each of these groups, decomposing between those who put high salience or low salience on immigration. So whenever I'm going to have a result that talks about high salience of immigration, to us, it's going to mean that this alpha is high. Okay, the share of people that value migration more than ideology is high in the population.
Can I ask a question, clarifying question? So left and right, are you assuming that there's the same mass on left and on the right? Because the FL and 1 minus FL adds up to 1?
No, so this should be weighted by MR. So these ML and MR are
gotcha.
the share of people with, so the total share of people that are anti-immigration leftist would be FL times ML.
Gotcha, thanks.
Okay. We don't really make any particular assumption on ML, FL. We're going to look at alphas most of the time, but we have no restriction on that. Right. So here's our parties. These are the red dots. We're going to have two traditional parties, the leftists and the rightists, who both offer a pro-immigration policy. Or if you want to, you don't even have to think of pro-immigration, but a neutral, like it's not against, okay? And the focus for us will be on the entrance of a third party that if it enters with a right-wing anti-immigration policy, okay? So it's really a very, very simple model. It's robust to some changes, okay? But our focus is simply to look at the conditions under which the entrant wants to enter depending on the electoral system. Okay, fixing the behavior of the two traditional parties, left and right. So, again, on the electoral system, plurality is, under plurality, the party with the largest share of votes wins the elections and forms a government. In dual ballot, there's a first round where all parties compete, and in order to win, you need 50% of the votes. If no party gets the 50% of the votes, then the two parties with the largest share of votes go to the second round. That's a standard runoff system. So the focus for us will be this parameter A, that we interpret as the anti-immigrant sentiment in the country, and that's simply the share of people that would vote for the entrant if the entrant entered, okay, in a three-party competition, that would vote sincerely for the entrant, okay? So who are these people? Let me go back to the graph because it's easier to see. Clearly, all the people that share exactly the same ideological position as the entrant would vote for the entrant, okay? So that's FR times MR, plus, so the pro-immigrant people have their favorite party, okay, so they're gonna vote for that. So the only people in doubt are the anti-immigrant leftists. A share of them, alpha, as I said before, will vote for the entrant because they prefer a party that gives them what they want on immigration, and the other share, 1 minus alpha, will vote for the leftist party. So in total, this A will be FR MR plus alpha L FL times ML, which is what we have here. So again, all the people that sincerely would rank first the anti-immigrant right-wing party among the three that they have. So if we don't include any uncertainty, so if everything is deterministic in the model, okay, we can define a threshold for this A, and we call this threshold T, such that whenever A is above this threshold, the entrant wins if they enter. Okay, that's a minimum share of votes for the entrant to win in this competition. And this clearly depends on the electoral system. So we have actually 4 thresholds. We have TP, the threshold under plurality, TPR, that's the threshold under proportional representation, and then for dual ballot we actually have 2 because we need to distinguish the case where the entrant would go to the second round against the leftist and again against the rightist. Okay, but that's technical things. But so again, this T defines the minimum share of votes for A, the minimum value of A, such that if the entrant decides to enter, they win under plurality or under dual ballot. So our first proposition characterizes these thresholds. We show that the threshold for plurality is in between 1/3 and 1/2. I'm not going to bore you on what the threshold for dual ballot and proportional representation are. The important thing is that these thresholds are identified when alphas are sufficiently high. Okay, it doesn't hold in general. And that's why we're focusing on a situation where immigration is salient in a country.
I'm sorry, we're assuming sincere voting here all along, even the first round and everything?
So yes, the knowledge fully on sincere voting. We are working on strategic voting at the moment. We don't have any full result yet. We believe that things would not change too much in the sense that in the worst case scenario, we are overestimating the difference between the two systems. The difference might be lower, but it's never in the opposite direction. We're never going to find that plurality is more open than dual ballot. The issue that we have with strategic voting is multiplicity of equilibria at the moment. So so we need to be a little bit more careful with that. So I don't have any sure result but we are working on this result at the moment.
Okay, because that kind of drives a lot of stuff, I guess. So in the first round, I can vote. I know my party's going to lose, but I vote for it anyway. And in the second round, I vote for my second best party among the ones that are my first best among the ones that are remaining. Is that what I'm doing?
So sorry, say it again. In the first round?
So in the first round, there's 3 parties or
yes,
whatever, and I vote for my best party.
Yeah.
Even though I know it loses, it's gonna lose, doesn't matter. Yes. And then of the ones that are left in the second round, I still vote.
You vote exactly. That's what's happening.
This is what you have.
Yes. Now, if you think about strategic voting in the end essentially reduces under plurality the competition to a 2-party competition, right? Because you're only going to vote for the parties that are involved in the most likely time, which is exactly what happens in the second round of dual ballot. So the conditions should be very similar in that, and that's why in the worst case scenario, the two systems are similar. The issue is what happens if the most likely tie is between the left and the right. party under plurality, and then you have no vote for the entrant, while you might have that in dual ballot. So we're still working on that. So I don't have, but the problem might be multiplicity of equilibria. And right. So going back to the going back to the proposition, the interesting bit about the proposition is the corollary that we have. We're able to show that this threshold, for plurality, TP, is always weakly lower than any other threshold for any other system. What does it mean? It means that the minimum share of votes necessary for an anti-immigrant party to enter under plurality is never higher than under any other system. Okay, so it's always easier and more likely. It's always easier to succeed, if you want, for an anti-immigrant party under plurality than under the other systems. The next step that we do is to introduce a little bit of uncertainty in the model. Okay, so far there were A voters that preferred the anti-immigrant party and A voters would vote for them. What we do in the next step is that we assume that the actual votes for this party are A plus epsilon, where epsilon is a random variable with mean 0 and variance sigma square. We have we characterize the CDF for this random variable. You should think of a normal distribution. Sorry, for epsilon, that would work with a normal distribution. So once we have this added uncertainty, we actually define the probability that conditional on entering, the entrant wins. And this is simply the probability that the entrant, so the actual votes that the entrant gets, pass the threshold that we defined before. So if we fix everything else, okay, so if we fix cost of entry and benefits from entering, we can interpret this as a proxy of, a party is more likely to enter the higher this probability is. So this is actually a proxy for a probability of entering for a party. A question? Yes?
Yeah, sorry. To what extent do you think that this type of model is applicable to a wide range of issues, right? Because I mean, in what makes it appropriate to model something like migration issues specifically? Because my sense is that under plurality and these circumstances, any sort of like issue that can become salient and is not strongly correlated with either left or right could follow the same mechanism, right?
You are 100% true. And indeed, we are considering future steps to check. So, okay, the reason why we're using immigration now is, well, a little bit because of, the migration crisis and also because we have the data to test this. Okay, so that's also, but we're considering other dimension, environmental issues, for example, would be something to test. We are considering female representation, maybe with some tweaks in the model we have to consider. So definitely, this is the conclusions for this model apply to more general settings than just immigration. Yeah, the problem is then how you measure things, and as you said, it has to be a situation where a party can almost run only on one issue, right? It has to be a very well-defined, that is very poorly correlated with other dimensions, yes. But conditional on that, this doesn't just talk, it is not a model about immigration only. Yes, thank you for clarifying this.
Thank you.
Right, so as I said, this is a probability of winning, which is also probability of entering. So once we've defined this, we can compute the difference in the probability of winning under two different electoral systems, and in particular under plurality versus any of the other systems, and this is delta of pi a. And again, this is the difference in the probability of winning for the entrant under plurality system versus one of the other systems, which is again a proxy for us for entrance. So for a proxy, of the difference in probability of entrance. And the second proposition we have is that this difference in probability of entrance is non-monotonous. So first, it's always positive, which means that an entrant is always more likely to enter under plurality than under the other systems. But this difference is very, very low for low levels of this anti-immigrant support. It increases, and when it reaches, well, the peak is at A star in this threshold A star that is at the midpoint between the two thresholds. That's only due to the shape of the random variable that we're using. But what is important is that this difference in the behavior of the two electoral systems reaches a peak for moderate values of this anti-immigrant support, and then it goes back to very low levels of this difference, okay? So, can I go to empirical predictions, or is there any other clarification for the model?
I have one sort of related question. So what is the variable that you're looking at here? The likelihood of a party being elected, or the policy, anti-immigration policy being implemented? What's the test? Right.
So in the model, the two are identical, right? So when you enter, you succeed, and in the data they're not. And I agree with you, and that's exactly what we have here. So were you?
No, I was thinking, because probably what you have is the sincere. So the parties have commitment power. Once they are elected, they implement the policies, and they don't follow the policies that the public wants. Okay.
Yes, you run with that policy, and then you stick to it.
Yeah, thanks.
Now, that's a very good link with empirical predictions, because in the model the two are the same, but in empirics we have the actual policy versus the people that run. Okay, so if we have to kind of translate our model into empirical predictions, the baseline result is that we should observe that migration policies under dual ballot are more open than under plurality. Okay. The mechanism, according to our model, is that this should happen to a higher probability of entry of anti-immigrant parties. Therefore, under plurality, we should observe that more anti-immigrant parties enter than under dual ballot. And the last result is that this effect is heterogeneous across this level of support for anti-immigrant policies in the population. So let me tell you a little bit about the data that we use. As I said before, we use Italian data, and we use the fact that the election, we focus on mayors, so municipal data in Italy. The electoral system for the mayor changes at the 15,000 inhabitants threshold. Below 15,000, the mayor is elected through plurality rule, and above it is elected through dual ballot. Exactly with the system, it is exactly the same as the one that we use in the model. So you need 50% to pass at the first round. Otherwise, the two top candidates go to the second round. And then the second element, the second feature that we use is this system for protection of refugees and asylum seekers that in Italian it used to be called SPRAR. Now it has a different name. So this is a second level of reception. So it's the migrants are there to stay for long periods and to be integrated in the population. Okay, it's not just the first level of reception, and it's fully managed by municipalities. So the Home Office organizes tenders on in different years, and mayors can submit bids. They compete to win the possibility to open a refugee center in their municipalities. The municipalities that win open the center and receive some fiscal grants and in exchange. Right, so this is our identification strategy. We use an RDD regression based on the 15,000 population threshold. So our dependent variable is the probability that a mayor opens a refugee center in their municipalities. Okay. DB is our dummy for municipalities with more than 15,000 inhabitants. So those are the municipalities whose mayor is elected through a dual ballot. And PopStar is the normalized population obtained by normalizing the 15,000 inhabitants. So 0 is those, it's a municipality with 15,000 inhabitants. we have a bunch of predetermined characteristics of the municipality, and we use time-fixed effects. We estimate it with a local linear regression using canonical-Catanico T-Tunic and canonical-Catanico and Farrell MSE optimal bandwidth selector. The data that we have...
Sorry, can I ask
Sure.
one thing? You mentioned about the standard. Can I ask about this a little bit more? There is nothing in the regression about the sums of money that are involved. Is that not part of the data? Is that not important?
We don't, I don't know if it's in the control. Is Matteo there?
Yes, but
Yeah.
I didn't understand the question.
So there is a stage in which the government runs this tenders, this auction essentially.
Yes.
And there is an outcome of this auction. So sometimes, you know, I don't know if this is the same sum for all of them. Is this like uniform price and everyone gets a constant grant for the whole country, or is there a difference between municipalities how much money they get?
No, there is a difference because they have to apply, and then depending on how well ranked is the application, they get different amount of money, but also depends on the size of the refugee center they want to open, which type of services they want to provide. But here we don't use the money that they receive because the dependent variable is the probability of applying for opening a center. So we don't look then who actually win, but is the application.
Yeah, this got my attention. This is interesting, this tender. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
More questions? Right. So the data that we use are for municipalities in between 10,000 and 20,000 inhabitants, and for the years in between 2005 and 2010. The reason why we limit to this is that at the 10,000 and 20,000, there are other things that change with respect to the election of the mayor. So, for example, the salary of the mayor or the council size. And we used to have data up to 2018, but we found out that in 2013, there is actually another policy that changes at the 15,000 threshold. So we had to cut our sample to all the observations before that date. So we have data about the SPRAR, so the refugee centers that are collected from the Home Office, the SPRAR webpage, the Virgulio archive, and we have data on when the SPRAR was open. So Max was asking about the tenders. Here's just an idea. We have data up to tender 5. That's what we use. Okay, so that's we have municipality and politician characteristics that we get from ISTAT, the Italian Statistical Office, from the census, and from the Home Office. This is the main result. So this is what I said, the baseline result, okay, that dual ballot, so mayors elect, the dual ballot should be more open than plurality. Translated in the language of our model, the probability of opening a SPRAR center, as Matteo correctly pointed out, is the probability of bidding to open a SPRAR center, should be higher for mayors that are elected under dual ballot than under plurality. And indeed, that's what we observe in the second column, which is the one that uses controls. Okay. This is empirical graphical representation of the results. And then let me go to the mechanism. So as I said, the result, according to our model, is due to the fact that under plurality, we should observe more anti-immigrant parties entering in the competition. Okay. So if this is true, we should observe more anti-immigrant parties entering in the in Italian municipalities with a plurality electoral system. Now, the challenge that we have when we want to test this in Italy is that there is a large share of independent local parties. These are called liste civiche, civic lists in Italy. So they are they're candidates that don't run under the name of a national party. Okay, so we don't really know who these people are and what their stance on immigration are. Sometimes behind that there could be national parties, but these civic lists are very focus on local issues. So we don't really know their position. Now, just to give you an idea, this is a graph that shows, so the blue bin is the share of civic lists that we have in our data under plurality and under dual ballot. So this is a consistent share of civic lists. So what we do to overcome this issue is that we run an RDD on close elections, comparing a candidate that was elected under a civic list to two different types of candidates. On column 1, you have a comparison with parties that were elected, with candidates that were elected, they belong to national parties who are not far right. Okay, so these are kind of the pro-immigrant candidates. Okay, in column 2, the comparison is with candidates belonging to national parties that are anti-immigrant. Okay, so with this RDD on close election, we check how a civic list compares to these two candidates. And what we find is that indeed, the dependent variable is still, again, the probability of bidding to open a SPRAR center. So what we find is that a candidate elected through a civic list is less likely to open a SPRAR center with respect to a standard, a non-far right national candidate, candidate that belongs to a national party, that is affiliated to a national party, while we find no difference with respect to a candidate that belongs to a far right national party. Okay, so the conclusion from this is that civic lists seem to behave closer to far right candidates. Okay, so candidates elected in civic lists seem to be more anti-immigrant. So the next step that we do is that we check we use the threshold, the 15,000 threshold, to check the entrance of civic list candidates, far right parties, and all other national parties. Okay, so if the prediction of our model are true, we should observe that far right candidates are more likely to enter under plurality. Civic lists, given that they behave very in a similar way as far right candidates, are more likely to enter under plurality, while the others should be more likely to enter under a dual ballot type of system. We have other things in mind to do, but I'm going to go back to this after I show you the result for this. So
Margherita?
what you see.
Sorry,
yes.
on the previous result, so how can you
Before-
capture if the existing candidates are becoming more anti-immigrant and far right?
Sorry, can you say it again?
So how can you capture that the existing mayors are becoming more anti-immigrant over time?
What do you mean that they're becoming more anti-immigrant?
So a mayor, say, who was on the left of the political scale, now they're moving more towards the right.
During their term.
During their term, for example, or across elections.
Well, so what we use here is the affiliation of the candidate, okay, to a national party. So we use the position of the party as a proxy for the position of the candidate. So on the left, on column 1 here, the candidate that is comparison is someone that, for example, is the Democratic Party, someone that is a mayor candidate but belongs to the Democratic Party. So we take the position of the Democratic Party as the position on immigration for that candidate. We don't know, we can't know whether what you have in mind. I don't know if Matteo has any other thing in mind. But...
No, I'm not sure we can have that. I mean, we can see their affiliation in the year they are elected, and then this apply to the electoral term, and then we observe year by year whether, or tender by tender, whether they apply to open the SPRAR center. But what you are asking...
I'm guessing not all the candidates running are from the national parties for which we can know the ideology.
Exactly, that's what we're trying to predict here. To compare those civic list candidates, that are those for whom we know very, very little, to try to see. Let me let me actually, since you asked this question, let me talk about what else we're trying to think. So what we would like to do is to try to predict what characteristics determine, using the information for the candidates for which we have information on their stance on immigration. Okay, try to elicit what are the personal characteristic or municipal characteristics that drive the probability that a candidate is anti-immigration, and using those as predict or try to guess what would be the position of the candidate that we don't know. But that's that's in our to-do list. Sorry,
Aren't you able to observe whether these candidates in the liste civiche were at some point candidates for different parties? At least in my village, they oftentimes jump from lista civica to party.
Yeah, so we might be able to observe some things about some candidates, yes. For some liste civiche, we have some information, but we don't have, you know, the full spectrum of, so we would need either to try to predict or do much more thorough search, and I don't think we can find it on all the candidates. As I said, in some cases we can find out, but not in all. Right, so let me show you what happens here. So what we're doing here is that we are running an RDD on where our dependent variable, the share of in column 1, sorry, is the share of civic lists that enter. Okay, so we're comparing dual ballot versus plurality, and the dependent variable is the share of civic lists entering in the competition. In column 2, the dependent variable is the share of national candidates belonging to national parties that are non-far right. And in column 3, there's the candidates that belong to national parties that are classified as far right, while in column 4 we combine civic lists and far right candidates, because of the previous result where I showed you that civic list candidates tend to behave in a similar way as far right candidates. So what we find here is that the probability that a mayor opens, sorry, that's not true. The share of civic lists that are that run right under dual ballot is lower than under plurality. For the national candidates that are non-far right, okay, so they're pro-immigration, under dual ballot we observe more. We don't find any effect for far-right candidates, but we do find that under dual ballot we have less civic lists and less far-right parties than with respect to plurality. Okay, so this confirms a little bit the prediction of our model. Now, in the last minutes that I have, last 10 minutes, I think, I'm gonna try to tell you what we do to test the heterogeneity results. So again, just to remind you what we had in the theory, right? The difference in the two systems, according to our model, appears when this anti-immigrant sentiment, so the share of people that would vote for the anti-immigrant party sincerely in the three-party competition, is moderate. Again, if this number is very, very low, it is highly unlikely that any party will enter under an anti-immigration policy. It is independently of the system, right? If it's very high, it is very likely that a candidate like that will appear under both systems. So what we're looking at, what the model tells us is that our results should be driven by values of this A that are in the middle. Now, the problem that we have is that we have no way to measure A at a municipal level, right? We don't have any survey that is detailed enough to be able to capture A at the municipal level. So what we thought is to kind of try to estimate it, combining the Chapel Hill expert survey with European data on European elections. The Chapel Hill expert survey has two questions that are of interest to us. One where experts are asked to state give a judgment on the closeness of a party immigration policy between 0 and 10. And the other one is a question about the salience of immigration for a party on a scale from 0 to 10. And I'm going to tell you in a second how we use this. And then in European elections, they're run under proportional representation systems, so we can expect, we treat that as a proxy for sincere votes by the population. So what we do, if we want to measure, for example, the share of individuals with some ideology that are against immigration, we take the measure from the Chapel Hill, and we take the measure of closeness of party immigration, and that's a number from 0 to 10. We divide it by 10, and that would give us a probability that the party is, we can interpret it as a probability that the party favors a close immigration policy. Or alternatively, another possible interpretation is kind of the share of people that vote for the party that would favor a close immigration policy, okay? Now, under this interpretation, we can do an exercise like the one that I'm about to show you. So suppose that we want to measure the share of anti-immigrant people within that have a leftist ideology. So the first thing is that we take the two major left-wing parties in Italy at the time. They were Rifondazione Comunista and Partito Democratico. We go and look at the Chapel Hill survey for the two parties, and the measure of closeness for Rifondazione Comunista is 2. We interpret this as saying that 20%, so 0.2, a share 0.2 of the voters of Rifondazione Comunista are anti-immigrant, okay? We do the same for the Democratic Party. This number for the Democratic Party is 3. So 3. We interpret this as saying that the share of anti-immigrant voters for the Democratic Party is 0.3. Okay. Then we go and look at the European elections, and we get the votes for each of these parties. And as I said before, we use this as a proxy. This is at the municipal level. Okay. So we have a sincere proxy, a proxy for sincere votes at the municipal level for each of these parties. Then to construct FL, so to construct the share of anti-immigrant voters with a leftist ideology, we take the votes that Rifondazione Comunista obtained in that municipality at the European elections. We multiply it by the share, what we interpret the share of anti-immigrant voters within that party to be, and that should give us the total voters within Rifondazione Comunista that are anti-immigrant. We do the same for the Democratic Party, and then we normalize the total for the total votes obtained by Rifondazione Comunista plus the Democratic Party. So we use this as a proxy for FL. We do exactly the same for alpha. It's just that now the question that we use from Chapel Hill is not about the closeness of migration policy of a party, but it's the salience of migration within for the party. Okay, so the things are constructed in exactly the same way. Now, with all the caveats that this measure has, right? And we're very happy to hear comments and suggestions on what else we could do, right? What we do is that we interact this proxy of A with our treatment, the dual ballot versus plurality in the RDD model, and we see how the results change as this proxy for A, proxy for anti-immigrant sentiment in the country vary. And sorry, I should have said that this A, once we are able to estimate FR, FL, and alpha L, we can reconstruct that using we can reconstruct A at the municipal level using the technique that I told you before. So, so if the model is correct, we should observe that when this proxy of A is very low or very high, we find either a small effect or no effect. And only for moderate values of our proxy of A, we should find a significant effect of the electoral system. To do this, we use the binning estimator developed by Heinmuller, Momolo, and Xu, and we allow for nonlinear interaction effect. So here is the heterogeneity analysis. The results. On the horizontal axis, you have this proxy of anti-immigrant voters. So what you should look at is the red bars right here. And as you see, for low values of our proxy for A, the result is positive, but not significant. Same for high values, and our results seem to be driven by the municipalities where our proxy for A is moderate. So with all the caveats that this type of analysis has, this goes in the direction of our results. Right. I'm gonna conclude here and take questions, if any. So we have theory and empirical evidence about the effect of electoral institutions and how they affect immigration policies. We've showed that the general result is that the plurality is less open than dual ballot, and this happens through entry by candidates, and we're able to show it both theoretically and empirically. And as Diego said, this probably applies to more to the issues than just migration. I'll conclude and I'll take some questions. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Margherita. So feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions.
Don't you think that in a dual ballot, if one of the two coalitions, left and right, normally has the tendency to be more split, might be favored? And so basically what I'm saying is the left tends to sort of like fight among each other a lot more in Italy than the right normally. So if there's a dual ballot, I might not vote for the one of the two left party that are running in the first round, but I might be voting for the second one. And that should reflect on the probability that I apply to open up SPRAR. Basically, if you show me that there is no discontinuity in the probability of a left-wing mayor after the 15,000 threshold, I'm happy.
Okay. I'm not sure I see your reasoning though. Would you mind saying?
If the left is systematically more split when they are running for elections.
You mean the voters?
Yeah, the voters.
Right.
And the parties that are running as well. Let's say that there is Party A and Party B, both left-wing, against a strong coalition of right-wing.
Mm-hmm.
Strong coalition of right-wing does not get 51% in the first round. Mm-hmm. So they go to the second round and A and B merge their votes together, so they get a mayor. Whereas if that would have been a proportional system, probably there would have been some like sort of like talking, but the mayor would have been the right-wing guy because has the highest share. And given my priors about Italy, I would expect this to happen more often with the left wing than with the right wing, but I might be wrong.
No, I share your prior, and then. Okay.
And if that is the case, then I think that it would be more likely at the margin that if there is DB left wings, it's on the margin more likely that left wing wins. So that would impact on your results about the probability of applying for a SPRAR, because again, my prior would be that it's left-wing mayor who apply for a SPRAR more often than right-wing mayor.
I see. Okay. I think we have information to check it. No, Matteo. So we can definitely do that.
Yeah, we can. I think we.
Yes.
So, but your idea here is that left-wing mayor are more likely to win with a dual ballot than with a plurality.
Yeah. I mean, it's something I would like to see to be convinced of, because my prior goes completely against. Yeah.
Okay.
And I think it's something that is shared among people with some knowledge about Italy.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
But it also has to do with the fact that so your idea is that left-wing coalition are more fragile essentially than right-wing. But I'm not sure at the local level is necessarily the case, because it might be, I don't know, like if you take a party like Lega, a local level might be strong enough to run alone in various situations.
Yeah,
well, I don't know. It's something we have to check.
I totally agree with you. It could be the case.
Yeah, but we have to check it. I agree on this comment.
More questions? I can pick one maybe. So I was thinking, I forgot the time period of your data, but are there cases where municipalities switched from plurality to dual ballot because they increased the population size? And that is also because of refugees and immigration?
Maybe I can answer. So the switch depends on population. So if they pass the threshold because population is increasing, I think there are cases, and but they are not a lot. It shouldn't matter on the number of migrants though. So But I mean, again, it's something we can check, but it should be a very small number.
Right.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts?
Could you check if your alpha is correlated with measures that are usually predictive of anti-immigration sentiment, like in a China shock style?
Yes,
I think that would validate your alpha a lot.
Yeah, sure, we can do it. Yeah.
Are there more questions? Right, I think if there are no questions, then we can end the session earlier today. I'll stop the recording now, and if someone still wants to